Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Ryan Perry here with Digital Mastermind Academy. And as usual, I have my co-founder and co-partner. I don't know, are you a co-partner or are you just a partner, Sarah?
I would probably partner.
Yeah, we could
Co-founder.
co-partner together, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
All
Semantics.
right. The question of the day, if you know the answer, let us know below. I think, yeah, we're partners. Um, let's talk about social media. We already had week one. We talked about some of the foundations of social media, the different platforms that are out there. We talked about the difference in demographically who's on those different platforms to get a sense or an idea of what platform you should be on. And today we want to kind of dig into that a little bit more and talk about social media. Where do you get content? How do we automate or semi-automate content? How much content should we be pushing out? I mean, there's a lot involved when it comes to social media.
There is. And so we want to make sure, since we gave you the basics last week, that we put you in kind of secure footing and you know what to plan for and how much you should plan for, because that'll help you decide where you're going to play on social media. And like we said last week, you do not need to be on every platform, and seeing the quantity that some of them require might drive it home that you really should pick one where your audience really is and just focus on that and do that really well.
Okay, and as far as focusing, the first thing that we really need to focus on is a goal. And so we could start this presentation off with is really understanding what is your goal. If you don't know what you want to accomplish, it's really hard to accomplish anything. So I always like to start with the end in mind. And when you're thinking about social media, what is it that you actually want to do? Is it that you're trying to get X number of views, X number of likes? Are you trying to drive traffic to your website? Are you looking at this as just purely a branding, which we talked about the difference between branding and ROI, and that there is a big difference there when it comes to social media. Know your audience, which platform they're on, how much time do you have is really, really important so you can do the best possible job. And then, of course, analytics is all about review and making sure that you're fine tuning your work so that you're hitting your goals so that you can set your next goals a little higher.
Right. And you want to have realistic goals as well. You're not going to go from 0 to 1,000 in 5.2 seconds. So have some realistic goals of, and an easy one to start off with is building a community, having some engagement. How many people are engaging with your page and your content, and paying attention to the analytics to see, as you're putting content out, what content's working, what's not. I think I've used in the past an example where I was looking at a client's, their engagement, and it was really, really high for all the photos we were putting out, but not so high for the links. And so digging into why that is it the type of content on the links, or, started to analyze about why the engagement is so vastly different between the two sides of the content.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've also talked about, and this goes back to, I think, our very first show that we did when we were talking about just digital marketing, and we got a little bit more specific in SEO, and that is branding. The other thing you really want to make sure is that you have good branding. If you start spending the time of driving people to your website and you're doing a great job, the last thing you want to do is turn people away because of poor branding.
Right. And so you want to look at what it all starts really with your logo. Before you even get into the digital space, what does your logo look like? Is it attractive to your audience? Is it outdated? Is it something that you did yourself when you started out, which is okay, but now it might be time to hire a graphic designer and have them redo your brand and revisit what it looks like. But once you've got your brand put together and you're happy with it, you want to go through your social media accounts and make sure your branding is consistent. Uh, my recommendation is having your logo as your profile image. Hey, Ryan, can you mute for a second? I'm getting feedback. Perfect. So one of my recommendations for my social media clients is the profile image on all your different profiles, on all your different accounts, should be your logo. Unless there's a reason you're in a specific industry where your face is more important than your logo, I highly recommend the logo, because you want people to start recognizing that as they're scrolling through the feed with a ton of information. You want it to stand out and you want it to be recognizable. And so your logo, and you want them to recognize the logo as they see it around, because the more they recognize it, the more it'll be ingrained in them to interact and go to you for whatever your specific services are. The cover photos don't have to be the same across all the different platforms. You can have them different with slightly different messages, but they need to be cohesive to your brand. And so you'll see on the example on the screen, we use UCSF. They have different pictures on each platform. However, they go together. They're all about the people working at the hospital. And so you'll see how it's a cohesive brand, but their avatars are all they're all the same. The logo's in the same place with a colored background with their two different primary colors of blue. So you want to just make sure you look at all that, see if it's consistent and pretty, and if it matches and is eye-catching and pleasing to your audience. Hear you again. The fuck is going on? So I'm continuing to have technical difficulties today, and I can't hear you. So I have no idea what you were saying. So I'm gonna hop out and hop back in.
A lot of people, this is one of the areas that people really struggle with, because finding content, it's ongoing. It's a never-ending story. Especially later on in today's show, we're going to talk about how much content you need to create, and that can be a little overwhelming. So we're going to give you some resources on actually finding content, and there needs to be a balance there between content that you create and then content that you actually find out on the internet. And Sarah, you back on?
I am.
All right. So you want to go ahead and cover the difference between curation and aggregation?
So content curation is content you're creating yourself. And so it's your own photos, videos you're creating, texts that you're coming up with that are tips or statements or things you want to put out there, and also links to your content, your website, your videos, your blog articles, and also creating images. And so, one of the easiest ones to do is find quotes and put them on. If you use a quote, give the person proper attribute or attribute. Give them credit for their quote, but you can create it with your own background image, your own logo. They're saying, attributing it to them that it's their saying. Creating content like that, you want to have a certain amount of your own content, but you don't need to do 100% your own, because a lot of this is about educating your end user about your industry, and so that you look like the expert. And all the content, you don't need to say all of it is from you. You can use, an example for Ryan and I is we'll use Search Engine Land or Social Media Today, Social Media Examiner. We'll use their content and share that, because they're industry leaders of training and creating content for our industry. And it's okay for us to share their content. They're not direct competitors of ours, because they're more of a news organization or industry news organization. But you can utilize it as part of your education strategy of teaching your customers and your potential customers of the things they need to know in order to be well informed and decide that they need to hire you.
Yeah, and then the fun part about that then is, do we just create a bookmark folder of all the different places I can curate content and then review each one of those websites every day for a blog post? Because that does not sound very efficient.
It doesn't. And so this is where we use software to curate it for us. And so it's an easy way to find, to plug in where you want it to look for and use that content. So it's kind of where the aggregation comes in, is finding content, and you can use InnoReader, FeedReader, Feedly, but then you're still manually aggregating content. And so we also I think we'll get into it in either this episode or the next one, into the software for automation software. That not necessarily automation for posting, but automation for aggregation to complement the content you are creating. But you should be creating at least 30 to 50% of the content that you're putting out there.
Yeah, and I'll say that really depends on the platform, because if you look at something like Twitter, where you might need to be posting upwards of 30 times a day, creating 15 original posts every single day, assuming your small business, is going to be pretty difficult. Large organizations, they got a marketing team, media team that can handle all that. So let's talk about automation then, and is it really okay to automate? Because there's a lot of people that'll go, you cringe when you say the word automation. I'm one of those people. At the same time, I do use automation in my digital marketing program, simply because I just don't have the hours in the day to do it manually, and it's kind of silly to do it manually these days.
Right, and automation is okay to a point. So using things like we have listed here, we have Post Planner and Hootsuite, Bundle Post, Buffer, TwitWorks, Later. Those are all different options. The nice thing with, say, Post Planner is you can aggregate content and schedule it out to post. What you don't want to do is post to, say, Facebook and have it roll over to other platforms, because then you're just regurgitating content and you're not specializing it for each platform, and people use each platform differently. And so you'll want to watch out for that portion of the automation. Like I just picked up a client where they had everything from Instagram rolling over to Facebook, and we don't want to do that, because also timelines are different. When to post is based on the audience of each platform. And so posting at 4 p.m. on Instagram might not be, 4 p.m. on Facebook might not be good, but it would be good at 4 p.m. on Instagram. And so you want to watch out for that rollover automation, because you're not serving your audience properly. But it's okay, because you still have to curate the content yourself. You still have to manually, to some extent, look at content, pick what you want to post, and schedule it out so it's appropriate and honoring your audience for that platform. And so you're still putting thought and effort into it. But what it allows you to do is to stick to your calendar and be consistent, but have your notifications turned on. So if somebody engages with that content, you can instantaneously get on there and respond to them and engage and interact, which is the whole point of social media.
Yeah, and the other thing, one of my pet peeves is when people do roll their Instagram account. I think it was Instagram, you said, in the Facebook, because the communication is much different. It's very much hashtag over here, and in Facebook it's not. And so whenever I get a picture with hashtag descriptions, I just go, no thank you, I check out, not interested. And so that's that whole, really understanding each audience on each individual platform and speaking to them uniquely is really, really important.
Right. And if there are few occasions where you do need to roll it over, one of the ways you avoid the hashtag overload on Facebook, which is one of the techniques that I use, is whatever the description is, I'll hashtag within the sentence 1 or 2, which won't be so aggravating to the people on Facebook. It's the bulk of hashtags that you might do at the end on Instagram. I actually don't put them in the main profile or in the main post. I put them as a comment, because the comments are still searchable on Instagram as part of that post. So you'll still be able to get the engagement without overloading the people on Facebook who just don't want to see 15 hashtags, because Facebook hasn't quite figured out how to search by hashtag. I don't know why, but
Well, Facebook hasn't figured out search in general. I think they have one of the worst search features ever. I always love it when people try and search for themselves and they can't find themselves on Facebook or something silly like that. So that's a good pro tip, though. You know, put all the mega hashtag information down in the actual comments. The other thing then is, okay, well, what type of content do we post? And, you know, do you as a user, as a business owner, understand that there's actually 4 different types of content, and we want to vary that, because as humans, if we always see the same repetitive information, if I just see picture, 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 it kind of turns to vanilla and it just becomes less interesting. And so we go, not really that interesting. Now, specifically, I'm talking about the big platforms such as Facebook or Twitter that allow a variety of different content.
right, you definitely, on the ones that allow a variety, you want to mix it up. Whereas on Instagram, it's all about pictures and video. And so obviously almost everything you're going to put on there are pictures. But on Facebook, you want to have a variety, because, and also with a variety, you can see what's working, what's not. And I don't want to see you do a variety where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to do a text, then an image, then a link, then a video, then a text, then an image, then a link, then a video. You don't want to have a pattern like that. You want it to be as you feel it needs, you know, as the content should go. And if it happens to be 2 pictures in a row, big deal. But you definitely want to have some variety on Facebook so that it's interesting to the people on that platform. And it's not just the same fluff, boring stuff, or the same fluff stuff all the time with no meat to it.
Yeah, and so what we have is a slide that talks about the 4 different posts that we have. Let me turn my little marker on. We have an image post. So this is an actual image that's been uploaded. The next one is a link. Now, these 2 look very similar. I see an image here. I see an image here. The difference is that this image was embedded or brought in from this actual link. So this is clickable. This will actually take me to wherever this link goes. And in this case, it's CantorDental.com. It's going to take me to their website, where if we clicked on this image, it's just going to pop open the image, and that's all it's going to do. And then, of course, we have our text post, which is strictly text, which is kind of vanilla these days, but is also still very important. And again, we want to mix it up. And then, of course, one of my favorites is actually having a video that is playable. The other thing people will do with photos sometimes is they'll put this little play icon over a photo. I kind of think it's kind of clickbait. Other people will use it as a link also. They'll use the video. So this image would have the video, and then you have to go to their webpage in order to see the video. But essentially, regardless of how people post, there are 4 different ways of posting, specifically on Facebook. These are all 4 different Facebook posts.
Right. And so you just want to make sure that you keep that in mind as you're creating your content strategy, that you're utilizing the variety that's allowed on that platform, so that you use a good mix of it without being in a staid, boring pattern.
Yeah, and then talking of mix, because every platform has a different audience, and also the way the image or the content is pushed out to people is very unique on each platform. It's really important to understand how much content you should be posting. So as an example, Facebook business page, if you posted once a day, that's great. However, on your Twitter account, if you only posted once a day, that's not great.
Right. And so you want to be able to, you know, we'll get into it here. First, let's backtrack for a second and go over what content's allowed on what platform. And then we'll get into quantity. Because Facebook allows all 4. Instagram is just photo and 60-second videos, which can be time consuming to have to create. Twitter allows all 4 with their videos limited to 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Pinterest is pinning photos and videos. So you can pin a video to Pinterest, but you just can't host it there. LinkedIn is all 4, and the same with video. It's an embed video linked out. Google Plus is the same as LinkedIn. The video is linked out, but you can do all 4. And then YouTube is just video. So keep that in mind as you're coming up with where to be, what platform you're going to be at, what your target market is how much variety are you allowed, because the variety actually makes it easier. When you have to do one post a day and you've got 4 options of type of post, it's a lot easier to find the content because your text one can be asking a question and make it very simple. Whereas with Instagram, you're going for one a day on Instagram, that's 30 pictures and or videos that you have to create or have created. And so have that in mind when you're making the decision of where to play, where, depending on where your audience is, where you're going to hang out, where you're going to play, because you want to be able to do it really well and not half-assed, because that'll be noticeable if you're not doing it really well and strategically.
All right, very good. And then let's go ahead and jump into the frequency of posting. And there is a huge discrepancy there, like I was just talking about before, especially between something like a Facebook business page and then a Twitter business page.
Right. So with Facebook, people use Facebook a little bit differently. And so posting 1, maybe 2 times a day is fine. The minimum I recommend is one post every other day is the minimum you should aim for. But the goal is posting daily. And if something is going on and you need to post it twice, that is totally okay. But you don't want to overwhelm on Facebook. If you're posting 4 or 5 times a day and you're overloading their newsfeed, if they don't love your content, they're not going to be happy about that.
Yeah, and the key thing with this graph that we're showing you is that these are general guidelines. Ultimately, these are for people that want to know that 2 + 2 = 4. Tell me exactly how to do it. And also for those people that aren't sure where to start, these are general guidelines. Ultimately, once you get in and you start posting, that's where you want to look at your analytics and start tweaking it towards your audience, because the more you can customize content for your audience, the better off it's going to work for you.
Right. And you want to look at your analytics for times that, one of the questions Ryan asked offline was, does that include the weekends? Possibly. Every other day is every other day, because if your audience, think about it, they're not at work. So you might have a really high engagement rate in the evenings and on the weekends. And so you want to look at that content or look at the analytics there about when your audience is on there, so you can time it so it's showing up when they're most likely to be online. And that might happen to be on the weekends, and that's where that scheduling and automation comes in handy, is you can still have it working for you on days that you might not be working.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to list is, even though we've got, I think, 7 different social media platforms here, just a reminder that doesn't mean that you need to be on every single one of them. And Sarah was asking about YouTube, and right here, the goal is daily. Ideally, you drop 1 a week. These are recommendations. If you do not have the bandwidth, that's okay. For YouTube specifically, why I like regular content. 1, Google likes regular content. So when we update on a regular basis, it keeps them interested. And since YouTube is the 2nd largest search engine and it's owned by Google, feeding that machine is beneficial, not only from a social media point of view within YouTube, but also from an SEO point of view. And then ideally, like in the perfect world, if you're uploading a video every single day, like literally 7 days a week, every single day, there's a lot of people that have tested this theory, and they found that their subscription rate goes up significantly when doing that. Now, I'm a huge proponent of video marketing, and I do not do a video every single day. So I'm not saying you have to. It's just, in the perfect world, that would, if you want to maximize your exposure on YouTube, that's what you would do.
And that's why we listed it as the goal. We have a minimum, which is where we suggest that you start. And then we have the goal of where you're aiming to get to. And like Brian said, neither of us are perfect on it. We miss days, we miss stuff. We don't do it. We're not always on the daily side of it. But if you have a goal and you know you're working towards it and you have a plan, that'll help you at least be consistent. And so if even our minimum is too much for you, pick a minimum for yourself that you can consistently hit and do that. And so most of the platforms we have on there where it's a minimum of, every other day or every 2 days with a goal of daily. The one that's totally out in left field that I want to talk about is Twitter. Twitter moves at the speed of light. It is so freaking fast that you can sit there trying to, just slowly browse through your feed and suddenly there's 10, 15 more tweets that you need to look at. And it's chronological. And it moves fast. And so it is a 10 to 30 times per day. And this is where the automation and the aggregation really come in handy, is you still incorporate your own content in there and utilize it as evergreen content, which is you use your own content over and over again, just not too much. And you fill it in with a ton of other educational content that other people are putting out that are not direct competition to you, so that you're educating your end users and providing good value without accidentally sending people to your competition.
Yeah, and it's really about just providing really good value. And when you're trying to create 10 to 30 pieces of content per day, trust me, some automation, some aggregation tools that are going to bring all of these resources into one location is really, really going to help you out.
Right. And then once you figure out where you're going to be, we want you to utilize the calendar. And we just did a screenshot on here, which is not that important because it's just a picture, but we have it downloaded and linked below. And I think we have it in last week's video also. You can download the content calendar or go find one that works better for you, as long as you find something that works for you. And in here, you can put in what you're creating, what your theme is, when you're going to have it ready to go, where it's going to be. Have a calendar so you plan out what your content strategy is, and that makes it easier to aggregate what you're looking for and to schedule it out on the days that need to be done. And so you get a handle on the content and it doesn't seem so overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about before we forget is within video, there is a sub-segment of video, and that's live video. And Facebook last year has really started pushing live video. YouTube did a push for live video, and that is becoming a cornerstone for a lot of digital marketers. And on this slide here, you can see where Social Media Today has some statistics that show that people spend 3 times longer watching live video than something that's already recorded. What's really going to be interesting is as VR, virtual reality, kicks in, and I know Facebook has invested heavily. They've bought Oculus last year or the year before, which is a virtual reality company. They're investing in this heavily. Video is already the big thing, but when VR becomes real common and prevalent, I think VR is going to be huge. And again, that's all video based, and be able to watch live video in a VR goggle is going to be a really interesting experience. I'm really looking forward to that. This is an old statistics, the best one I could find though. Videos posted per person increased by 75% in 2015. Here's a really good one for you business owners though. Video posts have 135% greater organic reach versus just a photo post. And Facebook alone generates 8 billion views on average per day. Now, since both YouTube and Facebook are pushing live video, the question becomes, as a business owner, how do we get that content out there? One way is using your smartphone. If you have a good quality HD camera on your smartphone, that is a great way. And there are some other options using desktop software such as OBS, which if you download this this PDF, there's links there. And there's also BlueJeans, which is a really neat tool for creating video, especially if you're going to have multi-people such as Sarah and I talking. However, this is a paid version that you can look into also.
And yeah, so So video definitely is the content of the future. There's no doubt about it. You can still do written content, but one of the things with video though is on Facebook, you want to natively, pretty much all of them, you want to natively upload them if it's allowed. And so if you create a video that you're going to use on YouTube and Facebook, you want to make sure you're not just sharing the YouTube link. You want to actually upload it into Facebook, because that's where you're going to get the increase in organic reach, because Facebook wants to keep people on Facebook. They don't want to send them anywhere else. And so just if you choose to go the video route, make sure you're uploading it directly into YouTube versus adding it to as a link.
Yeah, and the great thing about video is that you can actually repurpose that content, especially if it's evergreen content. A lot of times what I like to do is I definitely load it up on YouTube. I'll also upload it on Facebook but as it becomes evergreen content, maybe 2 months down the road, because I'm using my content calendar, what I'll do then is I'll actually embed the YouTube link into Facebook, so that I'm pushing traffic to YouTube. And when I push traffic to YouTube, I make that channel has more credibility because people are watching more videos, more people are subscribing. It creates this suction, if you will, of just sucking people into it, which is a good thing from an SEO point of view. It makes it a more robust channel. So you do want to have an avenue of driving people from Facebook into your YouTube channel, but typically that is not the main goal. You want to grow your Facebook channel in there, but let people know that, hey, I've got other platforms. Check me out. You know, if you're an Instagram person, you may want to let your Facebook people know that you're on Instagram and vice versa, because people are going to be on different types of platforms for different reasons, and you never know how or why they'll connect with you.
Right. And you don't know if you pick them up from one initially, they might actually use the other one way more. And so it'll give you an opportunity to be in front of them more often than so if you pick them up on Facebook first and then send them over to Instagram, which happens to be their primary platform, you have an opportunity to be in front of them more often than if you just kept them on Facebook. So don't be afraid to cross promote the different platforms where you're at. Just make sure you're doing the platform you're promoting well. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be in the perfect world every day. You just need to be doing it well and consistently, and not have giant gaps of nothing, because then you don't look good to the audience as you're promoting it.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So we presented a lot of information of where to get content, to resource content, how to aggregate content, the different channels, when you should post, also how to post the different types of content. So we covered a lot of different things. The big question is, okay, well, what do I do next? Because we want to build on each one of these weeks that we're talking about social media. So next thing you want to do is use the information in today's live broadcast and evaluate and update your social media marketing mix. Make sure you download the calendar if you haven't done so already. Please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you can keep up to date with ongoing training and the live videos that Sarah and I are doing every single Wednesday. And of course, because we just talked about cross promoting and we're on YouTube right now, you can follow us on Facebook if you'd like. Here's a link for that. So with that, Sarah, do you have any closing comments for today's show?
I would say just take a few minutes or an hour and sit down and plan out your social media strategy for the next 3 months and figure out where you're going to be, and just create a plan. I think that's the best place for you to start. Go back and watch the video again if you missed something. And if you've got any questions, feel free to put them under the video below, and we will get back to you quickly.
We'll get back to you as quickly as possible.
As soon as possible.
That we will. So with that is it for today's show. We will be back next week, same time, same place, which is 2 p.m. California time, which is now PDT because of daylight savings time. And then when we're not in daylight savings times, it's PSD or PST or something like that. It's too much stuff to keep track of. I mean, we got to worry about what time zone we're in, if it's daylight savings or not. Do I do 10 posts or 30 posts on Twitter? How long should my video be? I mean, it's amazing. We're not all just emotional wrecks by now with all this crap we have to keep track of.
I don't know. I just talked to a business owner that he's like, I don't want to do any of it. I'm like, okay.
I totally agree. I just want to go back to the caveman day sometime. Go, and we're done. Piece of cake.
Oh, if only.
If only. All right, everybody. That's it for today's show. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Take care.